Gravity Falls, a show of humor, mystery, and casual viewing. Unless you're me. My name is Christian. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Dipper Pines and about to rewatch the entire series. Rest assured, there's a perfectly logical explanation.
All right, now we'll move on to part 2 of the season 1 finale, Gideon Rises. And again, another great episode. I think I like part 1 just a little bit better, but part 2 is still really good as well. You know, it kind of starts off with kind of recapping the events of part 1 with Gideon taking over the mystery shack and swinging a wrecking ball into the main sign. And then Dipper kind of waking up and thinking it was a dream, but then Seuss saying that it wasn't really a dream. And the whole reveal that the Pines family are now staying at Seuss's Abuelita's house. And we also get introduced to the character of Abuelita, Seuss's grandmother, who will definitely become like a good supporting role like as the story goes on. Uncle Stan then brings the family's attention to a news report on TV of Chandra Jimenez interviewing Gideon Gleeful and asking him now that he's taken over the shack what he plans on doing with it. And Gideon bringing up that he's going to make an announcement tomorrow and will be offering free admission to anyone bringing their Gideon pin. And then Dipper starts to feel discouraged about losing to Gideon, but then Mabel brings up her grappling hook and how she might use it to save the day, even though Dipper says it's never once helped them. And Seuss is trying to like make light of their situation and say like, oh yeah, you guys can live here forever. But it's obviously like not the best situation. So Stan's like, we gotta get the shack back. So the first part of the story is the Pines family trying to get the shack back, trying to expose Gideon as a fraud, say that he broke into the mystery shack and stole the deed, but nobody believes him because, little Gideon's all like cute and cheerful and everything like that. And like nobody wants to, say anything bad about him because he's so beloved. So Colonel Stan's at a loss of what to do. And, he gets calls from Dipper and Mabel's parents. We're asking how everything's going, but then Stan looks in the fridge and sees that there's like no food for them to eat and like barely any milk for them to drink. So he kind of has the idea of sending the kids back home because he can't take care of them. Obviously with the mystery shack shut down, Wendy and Seuss had to find new jobs. We also continue the storyline of Dipper's crush on Wendy after Wendy brings up that she'll have to leave town to start a new job, and Dipper becomes upset saying that they need her, and then Seuss accidentally saying, Dipper has a huge crush on you. Eucalyptus trees. We also get the continuation of Robbie trying to get Wendy back when he chases after her holding a boombox and playing with her to take him back. And obviously Dipper and Mabel don't want to go home just yet, so they try to find different ways to get back at Gideon. So they try to enlist the help of the gnomes, so kind of call back to the first episode, and then Dipper and Mabel try to use them to break into the shack. But then Gideon has the gnomes turn against him by using a little pig whistle. The gnomes grab Dipper and Mabel, and the journal ends up actually falling out of Dipper's pocket for Gideon to scoop up. The camera then pans up and shows Old Man McGucket working on the Gideon bot as a callback to the episode Legend of the Gobblewalker when he worked on a giant machine. The twins feel like they're at a loss, and then eventually the twins are put into the bus to go back home. Gideon goes back home, puts journal number 3 next to journal number 2, then he realizes that it's journal number 3 and that he doesn't have journal number 1. So like any rational person, he jumps into his Gideon bot, the robot that Old Man McGucket was building for his new Gideon land, and goes off and chases after the twins. And then meanwhile you have Grumble Stand sitting in Abuelita's house, at a loss for what to do, and he keeps getting feedback on his hearing aid. Then he realizes that the Gideon pins that Gideon was handing out to all the townsfolk to celebrate the opening of Gideon Land is actually a hidden microphone. So then, he goes to run off and tell the townspeople. And then meanwhile, Gideon chases after Dipper and Mabel, grabs Mabel, takes her as prisoner. Dipper, feels like, he's worthless without the journal, but then, have his self-confidence in himself, so he kind of like jumps off the cliff into the Gideon bot through the eye and then like fights Gideon. It's really cool. Beats him, the Gideon bot falls down, off the railway tracks into, the ravine. And you think like, oh no, what's gonna happen to Dipper and Mabel? But then of course you see like the camera pan up and then you see Mabel coming down with a grappling hook and yelling, grappling hook, with Dipper at her side. So we finally get a payoff to the grappling hook, which, got set up way early on in Tourist Trap. And then back in the ravine, Gideon crawls out and then, the townsfolk are saying like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? But then, Stan comes in, tells him that Gideon's a fraud. He exposes all the different screens in the Gideon bot, showing all the different private moments that the townsfolk of Gravity Falls have, and reveals that all these pins are hidden cameras and that his hearing aid was picking up the feedback, so that's what kind of got him suspicious of like what these things were. So Gideon's exposed as a fraud. He gets arrested, gets sent to the maximum security prison, and Colonel Stan grabs him, like shakes him a couple times, and the deed for the shack falls down, but also one of the journals falls down as well, so he kind of picks them both at the same time. It's kind of like a blink and you miss kind of thing. So then the Pines family is, is like beloved. Gideon is sent off to prison. Mystery Shack is reopened. The twins are allowed to stay in Gravity Falls for the rest of the summer. So everything's all happy ending. And then we kind of get to like the last scene where Dipper reveals to Grunkle Stan that he's had journal number 3 the whole time, and that it talks about all the paranormal activity within the town. Grunkle Stan just laughs it off, and then kind of takes the journal and to come up with the ideas for new exhibits at the Mystery Shack. Obviously Dipper's upset about that, but then Mabel says, hey, you don't need that book, you're able to defeat Gideon without the book, so you're a hero. So Dipper kind of shrugs it off. And then meanwhile, we finally get to the very last scene of Grunkle Stan walking to the vending machine, typing in the code, it opening, him going in, which we've seen at the end of the first episode. Then we actually get to see him kind of going down the hallway and then to an elevator that leads him down to like an underground lab. And then we reveal that he had journal number 3 the entire time. And then now that he has all 3 journals, he kind of opens them up to a certain page and then puts them together to form a schematic. And that schematic is for a universal portal that he sees that's in the background in the next room. He goes into that room, flips the switch, the portal turns on, and he kind of looks up at it and is like, here we go. So now we get the big reveal about what's finally in the basement. We get the reveal of like what Grunkle Stan's been up to the entire time. But now we end up on this big cliffhanger of like, okay, now what is this portal? Who's going to come out of the portal? Like, what's it for? Which was actually something that wasn't going to be at the end of the episode. It was really just going to end with the reveal of the portal. But then one of the storyboard artists named Alonso Ramirez Ramos suggested like, oh no, we have to actually turn on the portal, just to have like some kind of big ending. So then Alex Hirsch kind of gave in and then kind of wrote that ending involved, but that kind of created problems for him in the next season. But at least for this season, didn't really have to worry about that. But yeah, and it ends the season 1 on a big cliffhanger, and now we're just curious to see like what's going to be behind the portal and what's Grunkle Stan up to, and what's going to be the future of this series and for these characters.
We also get several cryptograms on the page with the squash with human face and emotions. We get a cryptogram that's translated to "Don't eat him." Also, during the scene where Dipper, Mabel, and Zeus run out of the room, we see a cryptogram that's carved into a pipe under the floorboards, which translates to "Bill is watching." Also, in the left-hand corner of journal number 3, there's another cryptogram, and once translated, it reads, "The portal, when completed, will open a gateway to infinite worlds and herald a new era of man's understanding of the universe. Plus, it'll probably get girls to start talking to me finally." Also, during the end credits of the pages, we get another cryptogram under the possible hiding places, which translates to "Reverse the ciphers." And finally, during the end credits of the episode, we get a cryptogram that translates to "Search for the blind eye," which will definitely become a huge plot point in season 2.
So yeah, great episode. Still think I like part 1 just a little bit more, but this one definitely has a great ending and kind of sets up like what the possibilities are for the future of the series.